poverty alleviation, and social safety, and a member of course, the Federal Cabinet of Pakistan. And we've heard during the conference, Madam, about the Benazir Income Support Program. You're actually the chairperson of this, which we have learned is the largest social protection program in your country, but also really well known around the globe. And on a personal note, congratulations that you were one of 8 people out of women being re-elected directly to the Pakistani General Assembly. So, last but not least, and welcome back on stage, Edi El Hadi Ndiof, General Secretary at the Ministry of Community Development, National Solidarity and Social and Territorial Equity of Senegal. And with that, you might need your translation devices. A long history of working with the Central Bank and West African states on economic and financial programs supported by the IMF and the World Bank. Advisor to several prime ministers, but I think in this context, and that gives me the chance to sit down, it's quite important to know that you have personally been very much engaged in the recovery after COVID-19 and been spearheading the Force Fund and Economic Social Resilience program. So thank you very much. Okay, having done the introductions, I'd like to address the minister first. The minister of Pakistan. We have a sort of script, so I'm going to start with you. Minister Marri, we have heard over the last couple of days a lot about, and we've just heard it in the revamp as well, financing, digitalization, localization, amongst others. Your country, and we've heard all the disasters hitting Pakistan, floods and droughts again now, and high temperatures, is highly vulnerable to climate change and witnesses increasing frequency of that. So what role do you allocate to adaptive social protection in dealing with these problems? And what are your expectations, I mean, this is the forum, to the international community?
I didn't have a mic like yours. So first of all, thank you very much for having me. I would like to appreciate the government of Germany, and particularly Minister Schulz, her efforts, and the other partners, World Bank, GIZ, who've come together to put this great event here in the very heart of Berlin. Thank you very much for giving us an opportunity of being here. As you've rightly highlighted the fact that Pakistan is prone to climate shocks, and we very recently have experienced devastating floods of 2022. But prior to this also, in 2010, 2011, 2020, and as I'm speaking to you today, we are facing the threat of a cyclone, Biparjoy, in Pakistan and neighboring India. So we are still today facing the same climate crisis and effect of the same. And as I speak with you today, prior to coming here, I was being asked questions about this cyclone. I was getting updates, and at Pakistan Standard Time, 11 p.m., we are expecting this to hit some part of Pakistan. So this is the state of affairs in terms of climate crisis that a vulnerable country like Pakistan has to face, being amongst the 10 most vulnerable countries in the world facing the impact of climate change, climate crises, as you may call it. 33 million people displaced last year, 4 million children affected, more than 600,000 pregnant women affected in the flood-affected areas. Luckily, we have a state-of-the-art social protection system at the federal level in the form of Benazir Income Support Program, which was initiated back in 2008, enacted upon in 2010, and World Bank just put up a slide here showing in 2011 they also partnered with us, and since then up till now, we are partnering and we are grateful for their support so far. We do also have provinces of Punjab and Sindh who've established their social protection delivery systems, which work closely with Benazir Income Support Program. So, like you said, how are we dealing with these issues? The existing social protection delivery systems were designed to provide both conditional and unconditional support to address immediate economic and human capital related challenges faced by poor and most vulnerable households. However, the basic building blocks of social protection system, such as the National Socioeconomic Registry, biometrically verified payment mechanisms, and technology-based grievance redressal system can be deployed to address climate-induced shocks as well. So we feel that there is now a dire need for us to work towards this, but we are blessed with the mechanisms that we've put in place from 2008 up till now. We've evolved into a very successful social protection sort of mechanism that we are today back home. So I not only, sort of when I come here, I not only come with the desire to learn from the 58 countries sitting under one roof, but I also come with this pride that I have a system in place back home that I can share with you, and I can offer more development cooperation in this regard. So Pakistan is willing to open up to sort of share its own experience with the rest of the world, whoever wants to learn from us, because we know what it is like we know what a catastrophe is, but not having the mechanisms in place is a bigger catastrophe. So today when we speak at this very stage, we are happy to share our experience and achievements to date. So we take great pride in saying that our efforts today have given us a data registry of 35 million households in Pakistan. So that's a very, very big exercise and effort that has gone into doing what we have today. Now, for example, during the recent floods, like we were talking about catastrophes, and earlier during COVID pandemic, we expanded the social protection system both vertically and horizontally to deliver cash within days to millions of families in a most transparent and objective manner. Very recently, if I'm to explain to you, 2.8 million families Benazir Income Support Program reached out to in trying to give them the cash transfer that was announced by the government of Pakistan immediately as soon as this devastating floods hit us. And we were the first agency out there. So, that's the kind of challenge, but
maybe you can explain about that, or go a bit more into a deep dive later on.
Yeah, sure, but I want to touch upon the NSCR. So if I do that, and then quickly we can move on to your other question. The National Socioeconomic Registry has the technological ability to add layers of data. We plan to work closely with disaster risk management related institutions in the country to be better prepared for emergencies, and that's where we are headed now. We also think that the key example, how the existing social protection system can be and is being transformed into an adaptive social protection system, and how it can contribute to national efforts for addressing losses caused by disasters, is the kind of sort of approach that we have today back home. And like I said, we are happy to be here. We are facing a crisis back home, but we would like to use all opportunity to learn and share the experiences that we have today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shazia, Minister Marri. Now to Minister Schulze. I've said already that social protection is close to your heart and your attitude, and Germany has already responded to some of the challenges that we've just heard Shazia Marri point out. Where would you say are the ministry's priorities as far as adaptive social protection is concerned?
Yeah, I think that was really an outcome here from the conference. We had that just a minute ago when we see these 6 points. Social protection systems help to break through the poverty cycle, and it is in the core responsibility of a development ministry to work against poverty, to work against hunger, and social protection systems are really the focal point on that. So what we are doing is work on different levels. One is the institutional level. We need a better coordination between the donors, between the ones who want to bring things forward, who take social protection systems into account. We need more finance on that. The financial level is important, and generating own funding for social protection systems in our partner countries is a huge step forward if we are able to do so. So that is the second part, and another part is the program level, helping to establish social protection systems. That is what we are doing here, driving things forward, thinking forward what is going on, and using data. It was mentioned before that data are really important, and that we need to have more data, and that we need digital convergence. It was named in point 3 in the summary. So I think that is really important. We in the last few months, my impression is that we go steps forward, that topic raises more on the agenda, because everybody knows about how important that is, and bringing that forward. Just a minute ago, I talked about the Sahel region, how important that was to bring donors together in that region, and that was the first step, and we need to do more about that. Or Niger, in Nigeria, in Niger, we were able to bring together the World Food Programme, UNICEF, and the World Bank, and we are much better in joining our forces, and that is also in the core here of the conference. Joining forces, learning from each other, making more of the money we have, and asking for more of the money. that is what is the core of what we are doing.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and one can actually feel your enthusiasm for that, Monsieur Diouf. The Senegalese government, and you've already shared a bit of that this morning, but please, even if you have to repeat a couple of messages, do. You have started to develop adaptation strategies, mainstream adaptation into development planning. So how are you going to take that forward in the midterm and in the longer term? And then, of course, the second tract of questions is about how do you interact with the humanitarian stakeholders?
Merci.
Thank you very much. Well, I represent Senegal here, but I think that I'm speaking in the name of all of Africa, and this is a great responsibility. And thank you very much for giving me the floor in this last round table. I think the time has come for social protection, really. We are right now in an unprecedented context. Never before had we suffered so many shocks. The pandemic, first of all, which was unequaled, and then there's climate change, and then there's economic shocks, and these are great challenges, but of course they also have opportunities. And today we have more partners available because many of them are much more aware about the importance of social protection. And today there's this universal consensus about the need to place social protection as a priority and to have a financing mechanism. We have green financing as well under development. We have also illicit sources of financing, but we do have many opportunities for financing. In Senegal, we have a social protection system which is harnessed, I would say, or relatively harnessed, because we have instruments to provide family grants to households, and this within a life cycle approach. which is we consider the evolution of every individual throughout his life, when during childhood, but also during adulthood and elderly ages, also people who suffer from disabilities, people who are victims of disasters. So this is a quite harnessed system that we have, also thanks to the support of the partners. And we have our single social registry, which works very well. Now, the only difficulty that we have is financing when it comes to disaster. And because when I have a look at the interventions from many different partners, yes, indeed, we're placing our focus on social protection. But the response to crisis, to disasters, is maybe the leftover situation, and because it's more difficult than to respond to people in vulnerable situations. And I think that in order to overcome this obstacle, we need to provide methodologies when it comes to crisis management and disaster management. I think I have heard that there's this mechanism for financing for floods in many other countries, but in Senegal, we do not have the capacity to develop this kind of system which exists in Asia, because in Senegal we do not have as many floods as them. And also, you know, yes, we do have floods, and when we measure this with biometric data, this is maybe lower than in Asia, but the impact on the population may be higher than the impact in Asia. So we need to think about these instruments, to trigger the right instruments for people who are in these situations. There are many projects in the pipeline, and they're inclusion projects. They're projects to generate revenue. And if we add up all these projects, well, I think that we could have ensured some coverage when it comes to attending these vulnerable people. But the problem is the outreach of these projects and the difficulty to coordinate all the small pilot projects and to scale them up. And we all agree on the need for collaboration. This is really important. But we also need to organize collaboration. And at a national level, in the structures of the state, and I already said that before, the state needs to become organized with all the different parties. We need to make a much better planning. If we don't have a planning, no partner will help us. So social protection without financing, this is a very delicate issue, because of course you can target people, but if your governance is weak, you're going to generate more inequality. So this is something that we need to tackle on coordination at a national level and also at a sub-regional level. Somebody said that, I think it was a representative of Mauritania. And when it comes to sub-regional institutions, we also require coordination there. Let's think about legislation. I'm going to give you an example: universal coverage, health coverage. We have a sub-regional legislation that obliges us to reform all the health insurance system. And this allows us today to face also trade union movements. In the past, it was difficult to undertake reforms regarding this issue, but now we can normalize this, and thanks to all this sub-regional level, we were able to standardize this. So I think that we need to act at the sub-regional level and at the national level, and of course international level with all the partners, in order to mobilize much more and fight against vulnerability. I haven't finished here, but I will have the chance to develop much more.
Thank you very much, Axel von Trotzenburg. We know that the World Bank has made adaptive social protection a priority now, and we've seen the timeline. We fortunately do not start from scratch. But where do you actually sort of see the line going on? We saw it stopping in 23, but let's look forward. What are your midterm, what are your longer term perspectives on adaptive social protection, and the stress is, of course, on the adaptive?
Well, let me first congratulate the Minister Schulz and the whole
your whole team here at the ministry for convening and organizing this event. I think there is an incredible need of a dialogue. I would like to congratulate Esther and Colin for really summarizing in absolutely spectacular form the thing. So congratulations. Now I'm asking, what do I have to add? But it's very well done. I think, look, first I will get to the social protection. Let's all keep in mind that the SDGs are hopelessly off. And so what we need to think is that when we are thinking of social protection, we need to think of many other things at the same time as well. This is no longer a single issue. But there are interesting things on social protection. And when you saw the chart, the bar chart on World Bank commitments on social protection, and there was something interesting, not because it's the World Bank, but basically what you are going to see is once 30 years ago, this was a marginal topic. Then it started to get into middle-income countries, Mexico and particularly Latin America. What's interesting in there is, well, some people may not be familiar, but it showed IBRD lending is mainly to middle-income countries and then for IDA lending. And that was the dark blue. The dark blue chart went up exponentially. What that means is that actually social protection systems have been more systematically introduced in low-income countries. And that is good news. That is good news. And you just mentioned, for example, Niger. So this is something that is absolutely essential, that social protection systems are not middle income or only OECD matters, are global matters, including low-income countries. And we need to build systems. So this is very, very important that diagram showed us. So there, the work is cut out, because what we are seeing is that we are still not reaching a lot of people. And that means that we need basically to say how to build those systems. And then there comes the challenges. They are different at levels for middle-income countries than for low-income countries. For many of the low-income countries, there is even more than ever the whole link between short-term and longer-term. When we are looking at the food security, sometimes people think, well, we need to bring some food. Apart from what I told the board, that it is a scandal in itself that we are today still presenting project on food security. Because 50 years ago, the international community pledged that we would eradicate hunger in 10 years. We have utterly failed, and it's shameful. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't act. But the action is not only that you say, well, I have some food. It is you need to build systems in the short and the longer term, and that it means agricultural system. Because actually, if you have a good agricultural system, it may actually provide you more social protection than a government-sponsored thing. So what you want to have, you want jobs. You want to create it. So therefore, what we are arguing is you need to think that in a more complex matter, but it is actually a very, very important thing. The second is to make sure the financing is there, and particularly for low-income countries, that is a huge challenge. They have to do also their share. And some of you mentioned about domestic resource mobilization. I think you also mentioned that taxation levels are very, very low. Having said that, let's be also honest. With the COVID crisis, basically the OECD went into high gear, and they were able to spend at the worst crisis 12%, 14% of GDP, mainly for social protection. And this was the right thing to do. And then the middle-income countries were a bit better, maybe with 6%. The low-income countries barely hit 2%. And they were left out. And you see also the extreme poverty. So what we need also to say, we need to be very much aware that this discussion is necessary, because it is it is a source of hope, but it's also a realization that we are not there yet, and particularly in many countries, that we have to continue to learn, build better systems, and make also sure that we can actually react in the short term and fast, but at the same time, never lose the longer term perspective. This is one of the challenges also in the World Bank. When we are talking about polycrises and about the big risk, and I guess it is the same in your ministry, you could be caught up the whole day only to talking about the crisis. But there is a longer term agenda. And so we have to consciously force ourselves also into this longer term dialogue. And I think that is, this type of conferences are serving a purpose, is not only to do what you do in the short term, but in the longer term, because that is where we make the biggest difference.
Thank you so much, Axel. And I'd like to sort of open up the discussion with Svenja on one issue that is actually not new. I mean, we were always talking about women in development, but the new focus is a different one. It's a different quality. And you've just introduced that as a strategy for the ministry. And find, if I remember that your Twitter said you had a lot of alignment in the G20 just now with colleagues, mostly female colleagues of yours. So what is this special feminist development policy? How does that tie in with the adaptive social protection systems?
Yeah. We heard that in the summarized in the first point. Girls and women are more vulnerable to shocks, but least protected. And that means we need to do more, and we need to do that more in a strategic way. And therefore, I launched this feminist development policy. In a nutshell, it means more resources, more representation, and more rights for women. Because that is not only good for the women and the girls, it's good for the whole society. It brings justice forward. And that is what I like to do in all the fields where my ministry is working. And in social protection, it is really important because we know women and girls, they benefit a lot from social protection systems. And that the problem is to get access to these social protection systems. And working for that, that means bringing women, bringing girls in the system, bring them more perspective for their own life. And that is what we do, for example, in Sudan. We have there a development program that names 1,000 days. We have 50,000 mothers that get 1,000 days help just for the first 1,000 days with the new child. And that means a lot, having someone who gets help for the first days of a child's life. That means a lot for the women, for the moms, and for the child. Or in Bangladesh, we introduced an accident insurance scheme for workers in the textile industry. And most of the workers in the textile industry are women. And if they have a first insurance just for an accident, that means a lot. We are all aware of 10 years ago about the big fire in Bangladesh and what that means to the people. So bringing concrete action forward, that is more than speaking about that there is a difference between men and women. We need to act and work for social protection, and that is what I do with my ministry and what I would also like to bring forward in the field of social protection.
Thank you very much. And on the way to Pakistan, let's make a stopover in Senegal. Mr. Diouf, how much is the gender orientation also mainstreamed into your programs that you're setting up right now, and how do you want to carry it forward?
Oui, je crois que nous avons la claire conviction que
Yes, I think we are convinced that women are what is needed for developing our countries. In our single registry, we have 50% of households who are managed by women, so that everything we do to ensure family safety has to do with women. Then we have specific programs dedicated to women regarding inclusion and revenue generating activity. So all these programs are meant for women. We have a ministry of women and children. And apart from my own ministry, the Ministry of National Security, Social Equity and Territorial Equity, but we also have a life cycle approach, and we specifically take a close look at women. So our approach includes this gender value, since women are especially vulnerable, but they have a lot of potential to get jobs, learn how to get a job, and ensure stability in their households.
Address Shazia first because I would like you to dig a bit deeper than you did up to now. I did stop you earlier a little bit because we wanted to hear a bit more about it at this point. The Benazir Income Support Program is already a role model on gender orientation, and you were earlier saying, you know, this is what we can share. In a nutshell, what could others emulate? I mean, what is your approach? What could others try and do that you have already been successful with?
Thank you. You rightly said that we've already got a program which from the very beginning was very gender friendly. And with Benazir Income Support Program, starting with the vision to support the low-income households, there was another plan, and that was to empower women, to not only provide the support, but identify the women in that particular family as head of the family to qualify to receive this support. And you know, the name of the program is Benazir Income Support Program. It is named after a very popular, courageous leader of Pakistan who was the first prime minister in the Muslim world. So the program, you know, is named after a brave leader who happened to be a woman. And the word Benazir means matchless. So, you know, it has got some beautiful meaning as well. And I, sitting before here at this stage before the audience, I am the first federal minister for poverty alleviation and social safety. So, you know, so we are all sort of, we are in the right place and we are on the right path, which is why we didn't need to be sensitized as to when and how would we make it more gender responsive. We started with the very realization that we are going to be supporting the women and, you know, change the mindset in a conservative society. So I would say that this program was very revolutionary in nature. If you are to study the impact of this program over 15 years, and we are in the 15th year, you would. It is amazing to see how things have changed. How, you know, in a family where women were not even recognized for being there, or the existence was not enough, you know, sort of not visible. How the very importance of a woman in that family was highlighted just because she was required to qualify for this program, and none other in the family. No man, no boy, no boy child. So, and then we started 2 conditional cash transfer programs, one related to health, the other related to education. And here also, where we are helping a boy child and a girl child, but we are laying more emphasis and giving more incentive to the girl child. So it is very gender friendly and gender responsive. because we give an increased amount, like I said. Now, what I can, and I was also going to quote the same thing as Dr. Esther put, the girls and women are more vulnerable to shocks but least protected. But with our program, we are ensuring that that protection is available to women and the girls, and we want to now go one step forward. We are looking at now working with the adolescent girls and their mothers. So this is this is the future for us. So we are not waiting for a woman to be married to qualify to become a recipient of Benazir Income Support Program. We are going to be focusing on the young girls who are going to become mothers for tomorrow. But for us, we feel that they can be the agents of change. We feel that if they are focused and if they are, given the proper counseling as to how and what are the challenges in future and how to better equip themselves to face those challenges, we will have a more healthier environment, or sort of, like you say, the hands that rock the cradle are the hands that rule the world. So we will strengthen those hands well in time and not wait for that stage to come where we bring in pregnant women, lactating mothers and their infants. So we are going a step forward and starting much before we reach that stage, and that's the vision for us. What I can sort of offer others or advise, I would say that start gaining high political level support for gender responsive programs, where the actions are affirmative, where you have positive gender outcomes. Design programs where everyone has to take actions for positive gender results. So we had this program where we were starting, but we were not, probably we ourselves were shocked to see the kind of results we gained over the period of time. So I'd say get more political support for such programs and design these programs whereby you predict the change that takes place, which is more gender friendly. I would also suggest that, like Pakistan currently is leading adaptive social protection effort through the ministry in place, that is poverty alleviation and social safety. So I'd say have more of these sort of key roles in the government as to who is going to be taking care of this. Because there are many efforts scattered here and there. But if you have a clear mandate with a given ministry like we have, and we can happily share with you that today we are leading an adaptive social protection exercise under this ministry. So these are the kind of things that I can sort of share and offer others.
Thank you so much for doing that. Axel, whenever you have something new, and let me say certainly the term adaptive social protection is policies and the thinking behind it, then you have to have it gender sensitive, you have to have it shock sensitive, then you have it nutrition sensitive, you were just talking about agriculture. Is there nowadays a danger that the panacea is overloaded with all the expectations that surround it?
Well, I would say no, and I think it is the way you design it, the way you present it and explain it. Things are linked together, and I think the minute we just talk about the gender dimensions. If we leave the gender dimension, you're going to weaken these programs, significantly, and maybe you even lose it. So one of the things is, I think a lot of people will appreciate it, that you explain it when you are talking about social protection systems, and that you see that in a broader social framework. And I think if you were there just to take the gender out, or for example, that you are not promoting female labor participation, which is a huge issue, or that you are not dealing what we have been pointing out on the learning poverty, how many girls are left out of school. This is risking a whole generation of it. So where are you then? What kind of social protection system are we talking about? So then I think we need to really put this down. And I think people will explain. I think it is not the overloading, it is sometimes the lack of ambition. I think we need to be super ambitious, that we have to find a way to reverse these declines, particularly with the SDGs, and we need extra efforts. And it is a collective effort wherever you sit. It's not an organization, it's not a government, it's all. It is the private sector, civil society, wherever you sit. And if we don't bring that to the table, I think with anything you do in development, you will fail. So I actually think it is better to understand the different things. I think this kind of conferences are good to compare notes, how systems work, but also the interlanguages. And this is what you need. Because I think that, as you say, on one hand, it is a relatively new thing, but it is not really new because a lot has been understood. But what we need to see is that there are very many of the things where we actually need to see how we reach better the people, how we get targeted, and particularly make sure where the most vulnerable are. I think as an orientation, I would say you need to look at the poor, the extreme poor. And if we have had 100 million people extreme poor, then our work is cut out for this, and then we need to focus on this. So I would really strongly push back that this is overload, this is too much, and we cannot deal with it. That is capitulating in front of a challenge we have collectively to face. And I think what is the good news here, and you saw, I think, quite a bit of energy on things, it is possible. So we should not get in this is overload. This is, if we put our minds on this, we can devise systems. We have digital means, we have registration means, we can learn from each other to do it. So I actually think it is, I'm sometimes more worried about political commitment. I'm sometimes worried about a commitment to gender only in international speeches or on paper, but not living it. That are my worries, and the exclusion of girls from schools and having a chance in life. That is where we have to fight that, and I think the systems we can put in place. So I actually really think this type of conference, but also for the bank, but also is we need to push much, much harder to get this, worldwide expanded and actually more effective.
Thank you very much for that. Maybe if you would take a measure of the COVID-19 consequences on a social scale. I mean, the amount of child labor has increased, which is sort of, a quick no-go area, but it is just a question if families don't have enough money, kids need to try and earn money.
But if I can dare add, there we collectively have to engage much more in advocacy and call it out what it is. Because if this is, we sometimes, I feel also in the back, for example, on the gender agenda, this is not only acting integrated in your operation, do the analytical work, it is equally important to be very strong in the advocacy, because it is not enough just to have an academic piece of paper. It is basically being in the advocacy mode.
Thank you so much. I was just sort of trying to close that issue, but thank you for thank you for jumping in here. And I'd like to sort of move on and talk about something that you have mentioned already in your first intervention, but I'd like to sort of dig a bit deeper when you were talking about alignment of interventions. I mean, I know that you talked about finance, but still, let's start out again. How are the different ministry and the development partners cooperating? I mean, is it too much at the moment? Maybe.
Oui,
Yes, it's true that I referred to these methodologies of alignment between the different ministries and the different partners. This is a framework strategy that we have put in place. Well, defining priorities at the mid and short term is very important when it comes to social protection issues. And we defined those priorities in a framework of 3 years, and there was a priority action plan that was budgeted with coherent actions aligned with the National Strategy for Social Protection. And all the parties that were going to invest in social protection have to be aligned on those priorities. And then the sector or linear ministries, they have to formulate their projects, and then they are joining a 3-year investment program, which is discussed together with Partners for Development. And it is discussed in order to make it part of the annual budget. Now, the difficulties is that certain projects are supposed to be part of this programming, and they're not. So today we have the possibility to have a look at the entire multiplicity of projects and the different sectors that are considered, so that we can ensure coherence when it comes to the different interventions amongst partners. So if we do have this temporary framework, this timeline, and this good consideration, well, then we will not have any alignment problems between the different Partners for Development and the state. Thank you.
For that. Shazia, one of the aspects, and we started off talking about the issues of floods, of droughts that Pakistan is experiencing, so the climate risks that you're facing, and how are you sort of embedding that into the social protection systems? You've mentioned a number of aspects before, but can you maybe sort of pinpoint it to the climate bit a bit more? And are there plans to further the alignment of social protection and climate risk financing?
Yes, this is very important, and we started with the climate crisis and how Pakistan has been suffering. We are not the culprits, but we are the victims for sure. Unfortunately, Pakistan ranks, and I repeat at the cost of repeating, amongst the 10 most vulnerable countries that has to bear the brunt of practices that are not ours. We contribute less than 1% to the greenhouse carbon emissions. But unfortunately, we go through a lot. Now, this is a very sort of passionate and emotional issue for me, because I was hit by the 2022 flood as a resident of my home district, Sanghar, which is in Sindh. I was also hit in 2020, the same home district. I was hit in 2011, the same district. So I, for one, have seen pain firsthand. When I talk to you, I mean, I have the courage to talk today, but believe you me, I never had this courage when I was going through this. It took me months and months to settle with the fact that this is reality, and we'd be facing it, you know, more than once in life. At least in my lifetime, I've seen 3 floods. So it's really, really devastating. The amount of pain and misery, the way women suffer, the way children suffer, and the way animals suffer. I mean, the suffering is beyond anyone's imagination, and I cannot explain in words. I do say at this forum, and I'm not trying to offend anyone, But I want to repeat that we are not the culprits yet, the worst victims of climate crisis. Now, how are we going to look at it? It's something new for us, but like I said, the significance is not new for us. When we are talking today, you know that at the last COP in Egypt, COP27, and after the meetings at UN level, Pakistan's foreign minister was able to get this on the agenda for COP27, which was Loss and Damage Fund. Finally, we have this good news that there is a fund for loss and damage for countries which are so vulnerable like us and others. But maybe I would like to take this opportunity to remind everybody that we need to make sure that that happens. Just the creation of fund on a paper is not the relief that Pakistan feels today. We are not only talking for ourselves, we are talking for all the vulnerable countries. We are talking for all the countries that are vulnerable and yet have little or no role in the devastation that is now created in the monster standing before us. So while we have a vibrant risk financing system in place, which is more traditional in nature, like the death, injury, illness, and loss of movable and immovable assets insurance. But we do have to work towards the greater climate finance risk management, or how to go about it. At Benazir Income Support Program, we would like to explore this subject more. We would like to invite everyone to help us sort of work towards this and sort of create something, because, and why I say this, because at the social protection from that angle, it is the most vulnerable population that has to bear the brunt of everything. So adaptive social protection is the way forward if we want to deal with any kind of shock. But because we are talking about climate shock, and the most vulnerable communities, even today when I'm talking to you, the coast of Pakistan is being affected. The poor people in Pakistan are being affected. Their animals are being affected. Their livelihoods are being affected. So it is very important, whenever we talk about climate crisis, we cannot separate the adaptive social protection from it. So any plan, any strategy that we are going to be making or drafting to address the issue of climate crisis, adaptive social protection has to be the crux of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I would
Climate justice is what we need.
We got that. I'd like to roll the ball over to Svenja Schulze, who, of course, in her political career has also been a Minister for the Environment and therefore been at the COP. And I know that you were all for the creation of the loss and damages, and we got it at COP20.